In the interest of restoring our on-time performance, which has left us behind, I am going to move this meeting along and get started. Can I ask, please, we have no public speakers. Can I ask, please, for approval of minutes? Do I have a second? In favor? Thank you. Committee work plan. Linda.
There are no changes to the committee work plan this month.
Okay. Fair payment systems update. Amy and Charlie, we're in your hands.
Is it sign this thing?
You want to come up here? Would be better on that?
Sure.
I think it might be easier for you.
Sorry, my pause was whether to say good morning or good afternoon. I sort of, with all the rain, lost track of the time of day. So, good afternoon. Thanks very much for having me back. I was last here for the first presentation back in September. So, today what I'd like to cover is first a reiteration of a little bit of what we covered back in September, and then move on to talk about the concept as we've defined it, working the past 6 months. Describe some of the main issues we've identified in developing our system definition, and talk a little bit about how we'll be addressing them. And then, of course, tell you about our next steps in moving forward, particularly the activities we'll be pursuing over the next 6 months. First, to briefly go over again, what are the overarching goals of this new fair payment system project? These aren't in any priority order, but let's start with lowering our costs. On an MTA-wide basis, you're all familiar with our statement that it takes, on average, 15 cents to sell and collect fares. That includes fares and tickets, and again, sales, not just collection. This figure is driven by Transit's average, which is at 15 cents, and the other agencies, a smaller portion of our revenue collection, are at or are below or above this figure. But this figure is significant. It translates to over $750 million a year in expenses that we expend towards fare collection. No small figure, of course. And so every penny we can save off that average cost will generate $50 or more million in savings. Part of this cost reduction will come from reducing the use of cash in our system. Our goal is not necessarily to take out all cash in the near term, but we currently accept cash every single place we sell fares, from booths to ticket offices to vending machines and ticket machines. And it adds up to $2.4 billion in coins and bills, and currency and bills, that we handle annually. And it's one of the most expensive forms of fare collection there is. We also want to improve, of course, the service for our customers. We want to make transit travel more attractive through seamless intermodal transfers. Instead of offering at every agency a unique way to pay, we'd like to offer the same way to pay at every agency and make it less confusing and a smoother transition from a fare payment perspective for our customers to use more than one of our services at a time. We also need to speed up the time it takes a customer to complete their fare payment at our gated services, particularly on board buses. Select Bus Service had it easy when fare payment was taken off board, but that's not a solution for our entire fleet. We need to reduce the transaction times that our customers experience at the fare box from a few seconds down to literally a split second. That will reduce passenger queuing and improve bus travel time for our customers. This was summed up for me recently when I saw a woman swiping several times at Borough Hall Station, and she said as she ducked under the turnstile arm, "I can't stand here swiping anymore. I've got to go." And finally, we want to make our system open from a technology perspective. If we build a system based on open standards, we will no longer be reliant on a single vendor. And further, we can evolve our system as technology evolves, because we will be able to replace single components of the system without having to rebuild the entire system. Yep.
Does somebody have a speaker on a phone, perhaps, going? Okay.
Thanks. My team and I spent the last 6 months since we last saw you working closely with all of the operating agencies to carefully and thoughtfully define what the new fare payment system should do. We've identified all the stakeholders and considered this new system from their perspectives, with, of course, an intense focus on the perspective of customers and our employees. We held 15 workshops to work through particular issues and the practical implications for defining elements of the system one way versus defining it another. These workshops involved well over 100 people from across our agencies. Generally speaking, this new system is all about allowing our customers to pay for public transport in the same way they pay for all their other retail purchases, at clothing shops, bookstores, the movies, Starbucks, virtually everywhere. None of those places require you to use their currency, their cards, like we do. We require customers, on the other hand, to use what we issue, namely Metro cards, paper tickets, and passes, or transponders. We make this new system happen by creating a stored account-based system where the payment processing can happen on the back end. This is unlike, for instance, MetroCard today, where it's there's stored value on the card and all the payment processing is on the front end between the card and the swipe reader. If you lose your card in the Metro system and don't have your receipt, that's it. If you lose your own card or an MTA card in the new system, we still have your electronic account stored and we'll be able to restore the value to you for a new card. This new system will essentially allow customers to pay their way the way they choose and with what payment instrument they choose. If they want to pay as they go, they can, and will ultimately collect the fare from their bank account or prepaid card account. If they want to buy a fare product in advance, like the products we offer today, to obtain the bonus or discount we offer, they can do that too, and we will collect the fare ultimately from the prepaid funds in the account we will hold. And all a customer has to do is to tap their own contactless credit or debit card, or the one we'll provide and tap it on a card reader at the turnstile or fare box or railroad validator. This will allow them to gain entry and to pay their fare. Another important feature of our concept is the opportunity for our customers to manage their fare payment and travel through self-service. Today, for instance, with MetroCard, you can't check your balance unless you're near a card reader or actually swiping to get in, and then you might find out you have insufficient fare. We expect to use networks that are already out there, available through kiosks, other merchants' point-of-sale terminals, and ATMs, whether at banks or other retail locations, which are located already at literally thousands of locations around the city. Ideally, we'd like a fare account reload location never more than a quarter mile from every bus stop. Today we have well over 2,000 locations where pre-encoded Metro cards are already sold through delis, bodegas, and other merchants. We will be able to greatly expand that number with the new system by, again, piggybacking on networks that are already out there. We can do this because standard payment processing services already exist today. In fact, widely accepted standards are a large part of what defines the payments industry. No pun intended, but we can readily tap into these experienced service providers and systems and build our system based on readily available commercial off-the-shelf components. We already do connect to some of these payment industry services, of course, with our vending and ticket machines, where credit, debit, and prepaid cards are accepted today. What the new system will do is move card acceptance from these vending machines over to the turnstiles, gates, and fare boxes, or railroad validators. In other words, to the point of entry to our transit and rail systems. Our concept is absolutely applicable to all our agencies. The deployment might differ between bus and subway and commuter railroads because the fare policies are different and the railroad environment isn't gated. But the system at the back end, which is the core of the system, is essentially the same. We've already piloted this technology on bus and subways last year, and I reported on that in September. We'll be moving forward this year to developing pilots for each railroad, and we're in that process now. Each railroad will have a different pilot, meaning we'll demonstrate different deployment schemes and different technologies, such as phones at one, cards at another, along with different onboard sales and inspection processes. There's a lot of work to do to find a good range of handheld devices that will meet our needs, and we're finding this is the case not just here with Metro North and Long Island Railroad, but also at other transit agencies we're talking to. And so handheld devices for our onboard personnel will be an important part of these pilots. We're in discussion now with several vendors who are interested in partnering with us on these demonstrations, and we're aiming to launch these pilots in early 2012. As you can imagine, there's intense interest in our project from many quarters, not just internally, of course, but from all sectors of the payment and fare collection industries. As a prelude to preparing more detailed design documents and any requests for proposals, once our concept document was completed this past April, we decided to reach out to industry to seek feedback on the technical and commercial feasibility of our concept. So we made the concept document available through a website to vendors and suppliers after placing a public notice in print and online media common to the payments industry and transit. We held a very well-attended briefing for vendors on May 10th with over 80 firms from the payments industry, system integrators, hardware manufacturers, I should say, wireless carriers, fare collection suppliers, and IT service companies, all in attendance at this meeting. We used this session to spark discussion between the vendors and us. It was quite lively for over an hour and a half, and also to spark discussion amongst themselves regarding the ideas and concepts in our document. Both external and internal comments are all due in at the end of this week. Our next step is to turn this concept document around once more based on these comments and prepare it for inclusion in future RFPs. We also have reached out to our fellow transit agencies. We're not the first to make the move towards implementing open payments. As a fare payment system, we're not going this way alone by any means. London is far advanced in their research and development of a new system, and they plan to launch open payments on buses the first quarter of 2012. They also have, which is somewhat of an advantage, but not a complete advantage, something called EMV, the Europay Master Visa Standard, which allows for offline processing, mitigating a lot of the risk. Salt Lake City has also been out there for a long time with an open payment system. They're not currently actually promoting bank card acceptance. It represents less than 1% of their current transactions. But they've been at the forefront out in Salt Lake City with the system that they have, and they're continuing to move towards pure open payments. We're also in close contact with the other major U.S. transit systems that have RFPs out there for system integrators. One is Chicago, 2 is Philadelphia, 3 is WMATA. All of these are based on turnkey system integrator procurements, and in particular finding money from the system integrators themselves, their PPP type operations. We're also working, of course, with our regional partners and continue to enjoy a close and special relationship with them since the last 4 years when we piloted on buses and subways, on buses and rail, I should say, last year. Our concept document's been well received, and as identified in it, it's not a simple move to move our card acceptance to our gates and turnstiles and fare boxes. There are some challenges to implementation. Several of these are identified here. Let's start with the installation of the bus readers, where we first want to deploy this system. There's 2 projects, I believe you've heard about, one of them, Bus Customer Information Service, where we're going to share the onboard bus hardware. This was an efficiency identified last year, and it has led to savings of tens of millions of dollars for implementation of both Bus CIS and the new fare payment system. But managing the coordination of the 2 projects, of course, is a challenge, but we work closely together and, in fact, are co-located in order to facilitate the coordination. Managing the commercial rate relationship with the payments industry involving their operating rules, which are set by MasterCard and Visa, the fees which they set and issuers set, access to the industry hot list. These are all elements that we have to develop over the coming year. Developing a fast and reliable subway telecommunications network is absolutely critical to the functioning of this system. There'll be a significant investment made in order to make sure there is such a network available for fare payment, but this investment will also support several other station applications such as Help Point Intercom and other service delivery applications in the stations. Also, it's inevitable that there'll be a portion of our population who need a contactless payment card because either their bank doesn't issue one, or they're unbanked, or they simply don't want to use their bank cards in our system, and we'll need to provide it, partnering with another entity that provides these kinds of cards. And we'll need to make sure that it's reloadable, that it's reusable, and people can continue to add value to it for purposes of fair payment. I can't underscore enough or overemphasize how this new system represents a major change for both our customers and our employees. We recognize it's not as simple as moving from a swipe to a tap. It was 10 years from the start of MetroCard implementation in 1994 until tokens were actually discontinued, lastly on buses in 2004. First, it was installed, then vending machines came along later, and eventually new kinds of fare policy to incentivize customer acceptance of MetroCards was introduced. And all in all, that took 10 years. Will, too, take a gradual path to introduction of the new system, but not 10 years. We are taking a very large population with us on this journey to the new fare payment system, and key to our success will be effective and frequent communication with all stakeholders. Training for our employees will be critical, and before, during, and after communications and customer service for our customers will also be important. This is part of why expending the time we have up front to identify our stakeholders and thoughtfully define our concept is so important. I don't know if you recall, last September I mentioned the 110-100 problem. If you don't spend the time defining your system up front and you have to make changes later during technical requirements or actual implementation, what could have been a $1 problem now turns into a $100 problem later. Finally, our next steps. Over the next 6 months, we'll be overly busy with continuing our forward progress. We'll need to define in additional concept documents certain elements that were identified in the concept document we've released, particularly the MTA issue card for those who need a contactless payment card, and the reload network we envision to support use of that card. We're still not at a point where we can give an accurate estimate, nor are we making any commitments until we're sure we have a reasonable concept. We're getting very good feedback from our outreach process, validating that effort. It's critical we nail down key components and issues now through this structured and thoughtful approach, and not do this a couple years down the road. We'll also finalize the goals and objectives for our payment industry negotiation strategy. Some of the elements we'll want to pursue on our own, and some we may want to pursue in conjunction with some of these other transit agencies that we're talking to, and that's part of what we're talking to them about. We also have to finalize the subway network plan, which portions will be wired and which portions will be wireless and who will provide that service, and then enter into agreement negotiations with them known as SLAs or service level agreements. We also plan to issue this summer the RFP, the request for proposal, for the system integrator. This won't be a turnkey scope of work, but it will be a system integrator who will partner with us to implement this system. We expect to come back to the board in December with our selection. We also need to start installing the bus reader hardware, onboard bus hardware, both to support bus customer information service as well as the readers, and we want to do that together this fall. This is for Staten Island, in order to only have to engineer the installations once. And then early in 2012, we'll look to starting small deployments on the Staten Island buses of the new fare payment system. Thank you.
My guess is the last line of that caught your attention, Alan. Is that what you wanted to say?
Actually, no. Although it did, I am happy to hear that they're going to be doing the technology together, because I imagine there's a great savings and avoiding the duplication of bringing all these buses in and retrofitting them. But my original question related to the 15-cent cost per revenue dollar that it currently costs us, and what do we think is achievable at the end of the rainbow here?
I think when we're ready at the end of the year, when we've prepared our first detailed and full estimate, that we'll be ready to give you an answer to that, what a goal might be for reducing that average cost.
Well, what does it cost London now to collect its revenue?
Don't know the answer to that. We'll find out. But they and other systems who have done smart cards have begun doing a number of things. Again, self-service is a major way of doing that. Being able to self-service is the main way, but also better revenue control. And I think it's important to note this won't actually change some of the revenue control issues we have at turnstiles, for example. People can still jump over turnstiles or do things like that. It'll certainly make it easier to, in some sense, harden our fare collection systems if people are using news agents or using the internet or the telephone to make some of these transactions. And certainly taps will be less difficult to jam than slots. So we think there will be any number of ways in which this will make costs go down, but there's a lot more work to do to estimate that more accurately.
And also it will be over time because MetroCard won't be, in the initial deployment on bus and subway, MetroCard won't be ramped down until the new system's in place and customer acceptance has migrated to a critical mass.
One of the thoughts, while I got the floor, is Sertoa also on your radar screen as a pilot for the train operation?
As a pilot?
Well, in terms of for the transit piece.
We're doing the
Well,
Metro North and Long Island. Are we also involved in Sertoa?
Staten Island Railway has been part of the commuter railroad working group because of its hybrid nature of having open platforms and the MetroCard. So, in fact, they are very much part of this. We're looking to possibly pilot the handheld devices on their system.
Other thoughts? Jim?
Thank you for a very comprehensive look into the future. I, for one, am very excited and optimistic about the things that this will bring to the agencies. The one concern I have, speaking as a member of the Railroad Committee, is that we may be thinking too conservatively, and I don't know where I don't really know where things stand, so I shouldn't I shouldn't preclude or presume to know that. But I've over the years heard more problems than I have solutions. And I wanted to ask you, in that vein, whether you would feel enabled to discuss the most radical proposal that you've received for collecting fares on the railroads.
I think, I'm trying to use the words here. What did you say, free? Free. The railroads both...
It would take away the discussion of fare operating ratio, which might in of itself be helpful enough to warrant that.
I sort of would come at your question with the basic premise of the concept is we've defined it so far with a focus on bus and subway deployment, which is not to look for something that just simply doesn't exist yet or that the vendor community can't support, that's too risky and the cost will be too high because it just doesn't exist anywhere else. I think where we're headed is, and what vendors have talked to us about, is essentially the coming of NFC phones and the ability to basically tap your phone, and not a phone as a card emulator, although that's on the path to NFC, but what's called peer-to-peer mode, and where you're not having to go all the way back to the bank card issuer to authorize, and it's a real simple transaction because it's contained within what's called the phone ecosystem, and what you can read about today in virtual wallets, and that the phone is essentially your virtual wallet, whether you have one financial account or more, or even your telephone carrier account, your phone bill. But that's the kind of technology that is beginning to make more sense for railroad deployment, although it's not all here yet in the U.S.
I think underlying this, I think, is one of the things that we have to keep in mind here, which is that we have a tendency to make large system investments like MetroCard that are fixed at a point in time when technology moves rapidly in ways that we haven't been able to keep up with over that period of time. One of the things that I hope you took out of what Amy was talking about is actually trying to have a system and a path of doing this that doesn't actually lock us in place at any point in time, but allows us really as a platform to continue with the use of technology as technology is evolving. And hence the term future-proofing, hence the term open source in the way that we're doing it, hence the focus on mobile payments, which you might look at today and say may not feel like a big deal, but might have every expectation that 5 years from now will be an enormous deal in what's actually going on. The difficulty with that, which is obvious, is predicting it, right? Because not many of us can really predict where this is going to be in 5 years. So it really is about leaving open the paths for that without actually knowing exactly the way that it might be used. And if we're successful, that's what we will have done. We won't be about predicting new technology. It will be about leaving the paths open for this. Mark?
Do you have something that exists and is public that describes your sort of range of thoughts about fare collection on the commuter railroads?
Not yet. We'll be developing a concept of operations document similar to what we've now done for bus and subway. We'll be doing that for the railroads. We'll develop concept documents for the pilots and then with the learnings from the pilots for a full deployment on the railroads.
I mean, it occurs to me that the Easy Pass system on things like the New York Thruway, which actually will give you a charge based on where you get on and where you get off.
Well,
it kind of exists, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a similar idea of tapping your card or phone, where we pick up where your origin and we pick up your destination, which most people envision that's what we're going to have to do on the railroads. But it is a major change of behavior in an ungated system to require people to do two actions, if not more, in order to pay their fare on the railroads. We have been working internally on what the system looks like on the railroads, but there's just nothing we've developed in the form of a concept document that we're able to release yet.
Thank you.
I think all three of the questions, by the way, which touch upon this question, I think also make the point that embedded in this is not just a technology question, but a policy question about what we want to do, because various policies have real implication in the way that we do collect fares and the cost structure of being able to collect fares. Railroads in other parts of the world have very much moved to gating and running their system as a transit mode effectively, where people are paying before they, tapping in and tapping out as they do it. That has both a complexity in terms of being able to do it in some of our facilities. Penn Station in particular is difficult to be able to conceive of that. And I think it also has a cost element to it, which is not insignificant as you look at that. And I think part of what Amy is trying to figure out here, working with our railroads, is whether or not we might be able to achieve those same benefits in a way that would be more cost effective than just relying on the hardware of being able to do that. To this point, I think the answer is that it may well be that some of the move of technology will present some of those opportunities, but we can't give you a definite path right now in doing it.
I think I'm already hearing it in what you're saying, but major changes in people's customs and habits are hard to achieve, and if you can avoid having to move that mountain as an ancillary of how you collect the money, it's probably going to be a lot easier to get it done. Well, get a hopefully, well, I would see it all as driving off a cheaper collection system as a practical matter.
Well, I think to be continued on that. I think Amy hedged appropriately, because I think the question is a difficult question, and one of the things that we don't want to do is overpromise until we have a clear view of that. But I think what the other point that you're hearing here and very different from what you would have heard at this table 20 years ago when we were talking about the MetroCard system, was the railroads are very much in the sights for what we're doing here, as opposed to being thought of as a separate world in doing this. But it is a much different change than it is on the transit side.
Could I just add one comment to what Mark's saying? I think we're very much intent on using the existing, what I would call payment infrastructure that it's out there, whether it's swipe readers at any number of merchants that already exist, or even tap. If you go to Dwayne Reed now, you can tap. Same is true in cabs, of course. ATMs, using Visa and MasterCard as, in some sense, channels for payments and to some extent for charging accounts. Of course, the upside of that is that by using existing infrastructure, you hope to be able to reduce your costs. The downside is all of these organizations, or some of them, have to play ball with you. And so I think we're still in the position of trying to figure out how we work with these organizations in ways that are mutually beneficial.
So I'm gonna wrap this. Let me. I think one of the last points that was made here was that this all boils down to cost. I want to actually extend that, because I hope that the goals that Amy put out, I think, actually do extend beyond that. I think cost is very much one factor here. We spend 15 cents on the dollar doing this, and that's, in essence, a dead weight drag loss in what we're doing. No question about that, and reducing that's important. But I think this actually offers us also the ability to provide convenience to the millions of people who utilize our system in a way that they have found in things they do otherwise. I can do so many other things right now using the internet and using kiosks in stores and doing other things, and you have to wonder why I can't do it for what we do. It's the way I live my life otherwise. Why can't I do it for this? And then finally, there's a real service aspect of this as well, which is particularly on the bus side, which is if we can speed up the boarding of buses, we will speed up the service of buses. We'll make the service delivery a lot better in what we're doing. And I think that so much of the discussions that we have in this table often treat the issue of cost at odds with speed, with convenience, and customer service. This is one in which they're all pointed the same way. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is so important for us to press this forward, as Amy is talking about doing right now, and succeed. Because we have that opportunity to reduce cost, improve convenience, and improve the service that we're offering to people. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
What's next? Bridges and Tunnels is going to explain to us how they're going to reduce cost, improve convenience, and speed people through, right? Was that a setup? I'm sorry.
Absolutely right. Good afternoon. I'm Joe Keene. I'm the Chief Engineer of Bridges and Tunnels. And with me have our President Jim Ferrara and Deputy Chief Engineer Vince Montanti and Chris Saladino, who's the Facility Engineer for the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. B&T proposes to proceed with one of the larger projects in our capital program, that is the replacement of the approach structure on the Queens side of the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. And today, the purpose of the presentation is to present to the CPOC committee the results of a recently completed risk assessment for that project. First, some background on the capital program at the Bronx Whitestone Bridge, and just a snapshot of where we are. This slide illustrates where we've been in the past, what's going on right now, and where we're headed in the future. And you'll note in the center of this slide, you see a lot of work was completed on the suspended span, the main part of the bridge, including replacement of the roadway deck, and some other work related to reducing the weight on the cable, which was also very important for us structurally. Currently, you see the project on the Bronx side to the left. That is a $200 million project that's going on right now, and it's replacing the Bronx approach structure on the Bronx side of the bridge. So the project that we're talking about today is a very similar project, but on the Queens side of the bridge, in the area that's highlighted with the dashed lines. This is a enlarged view of the project area. You see the project limits are bounded on one side by the Queens anchorage, and that's an important consideration because that represents a fixed constraint on the roadway width that is important in the staging and phasing of the project. There's a transition zone that's marked, which we'll get back to later. And you notice on the other side, the project limits interconnect with the highway system in Queens, the Cross Island Parkway, and the Whitestone Expressway. A couple of things to note about this slide. You notice this is a shot of the current conditions out there. Under the Queens Approach structure, you have currently playgrounds, and you see a lot of trees and parkland on either side of the right-of-way. As we will discuss later in this risk assessment, these become important considerations that had to be addressed in the project, and indeed risks that have to be evaluated in the risk assessment. And you see the bullets basically give you an overview on the need to replace the structure. It's a 1939 structure, was built for the World's Fair, and with aging infrastructure everywhere, we have these kind of problems. And that's really why we are proceeding with replacing the structure. This slide, in contrast to the previous slides, shows a cross-section of the new structure. You will note it's a wider structure. It doesn't have the lane width limitations. You have standard 12-foot lanes and a breakdown shoulder as per current design standards. You have a double-arched pier substructure system, which provides additional redundancy and resiliency to the structure. And you notice the phasing of the project. The phasing of the project is dovetails very closely with the ongoing work on the other side of the bridge, in that Phase 1 is really off the roadway underneath doing substructure work. And by the time we start working on the roadway later in 2012, we'll be done with roadway work on the Bronx side of the bridge. And then we finish up with some site restoration work in 2014. So obviously this is a complex and challenging project, there's quite a lot of, in a sense, using the risk sort of prism of looking at things, there's a lot of risk mitigation already built into the project. And that's really where we've incorporated lessons learned, as you would imagine, from a very similar project that's going on the Bronx side. So that in a sense is an inbuilt mitigation that is already captured in the bid documents themselves. The next bullet refers to some work that we have incorporated in the project. On the Bronx side, the ongoing project, that is, we've incorporated about $10 million of preparatory work on the Queens side, and that really is to address our concern about one of the major risks of dealing with this aging infrastructure, in that once we start saw cutting the roadway deck and doing some of the other demolition that's required for phased construction, there's a risk that the structure itself may cause us problems and impact the smooth running of the project. So to mitigate that risk, we've done a lot of pre-work to stabilize the structure and make sure that we can move ahead smoothly with the construction once we start. Third bullet, obviously with such, you may have noticed in the previous slides, the local residences and the parklands are literally right on top of the right-of-way. So obviously there's a big premium here on working very closely with the community to elicit their concerns and to make sure that those concerns are properly reflected in the contract documents. And to that end, we've had an ongoing and I believe proactive effort to work with community groups, community board, civic associations, elected officials, and of course city and state agencies, most notably the Parks Department, which, as you can see, would be a big player in this project. And the last three bullets concern sort of mitigation, traffic mitigation, things that we've already considered, the usual use of traffic enforcement agents to control the intersections of the local streets, some temporary ramp closures, and the last bullet refers to the fact that these projects have really been synchronized with the work at the Throgs Neck Bridge, since this is really a common transportation corridor. Next slide.
Joe, I have an eye on the clock, so
Sure.
you're going to have to pick up the pace a
along.
little bit if we're going to
Sure.
get to the finish line.
No problem. And so this slide shows the results. The key numbers. The original construction budget was $240 million. The engineer's estimate, that was the best estimate of what the bids would be prior to bid, was $179 million. And you will note the dramatically low bid we received, low bid of $109 million. So when you compare the low bid to the budget, you see a delta of $131 million. Normally we run these risk assessments prior to bid, so we have to deal with market uncertainty and a lot of other risks. Here we had the luxury, because of time, of running a risk assessment post-bid with the benefit of the bid results. And here you see the results of that post-bid analysis. Basically, you see the low bid of $109 million, and we assessed the 80th percentile probability risk is $21 million increase to the construction cost, and total project cost a $27 million increase. And this slide basically graphically shows what I just described, the 80th percentile project cost. If you go down on the axis, you can see it reads off at $162 million. So as we move into construction, not all of the risks are mitigated. We will continue to have to deal with some of the risks that I spoke about. The outreach and proactive effort with community and local officials and electeds will have to continue to address potential issues that may come up, such as noise walls that the community may want to have built, more restrictive terms and conditions on the contractor for noise and dust and other nuisances. And so our mitigation plan there is to be very proactive and to continue to work with the community and elected officials and to deal with these issues very timely. Additional costs in general, the construction risks, security issues, regional traffic issues, these are other risks. And our plan to deal with these risks are to address these issues very timely, to stay on top of them, and to work very closely with all concerned to get prompt resolution to these issues and make necessary adjustments to the phasing, staging, and traffic plan. And finally, on the risk side, the schedule risks, basically similar. The potential of impacts due to regional traffic issues. The second bullet refers to some issues that we've encountered on the Bronx project, where the site logistics made it very difficult to pick and lift the new steel into place. So we're going to deploy a lot of the lessons we've learned on the Bronx project on the Queens side to hopefully mitigate that risk. And finally, as I mentioned before, we're dealing with an old and somewhat fragile structure, so it's to be expected we're going to have unanticipated structural issues to deal with. And our plan there is to be very proactive with inspection, monitoring of the structure, additional intensive biennial inspections, and so forth, so that we stay on top of emerging issues with that risk. And finally, where we are today, we have the bid results. We've now completed the risk assessment. We have the bid. We're in the process of setting up the contractor qualification hearing, completing bid analysis, and hopefully within the next couple of months we'll be able to get this project awarded. Thank you for your attention.
Questions?
Does this encompass any change to how traffic gets onto the bridge going from Queens to the Bronx? Or
No.
It's just renewing the existing configuration?
No, it does not address the, you're talking about the interchange at the Whitestone Expressway and the Cross Island Parkway. It does not,
Yeah.
it does not address, it does not address
blocks up
that.
the entire thing because of the backup of traffic from the Whitestone
Correct.
Bridge.
We have, as part of an earlier phase of this project, we have undertaken a study of what we call the Queens Interchange. We've had some very preliminary discussions with New York State Department of Transportation, but we haven't taken it any further than that. We have some long-term ideas on what might need to be done there. But this project concentrates on the immediate structural issue of replacing the very old Queens Approach structure itself.
Andrew?
Will you be advising motorists to use the Throgs Neck Bridge during this process?
Yeah, we will have a very proactive public outreach effort. Indeed, that is already well underway. We, as was mentioned at the earlier committee meeting, we've recently just reopened the northbound Cross Island Parkway ramp with 2 lanes, which is a big gain in giving people additional throughput capacity on the Throgs Neck, which is the major, as you said, the major alternative. So in that sense, we've been synchronizing these projects to get ready for the needs of the the spillover traffic from the Whitestone.
One of the advantages we have for B&T, which we don't have for our other agencies, is that we actually have the information about how to contact our main customers from EasyPass. And so one of the things that we're able to actually do is to be able to go directly to them in a way that we just simply can't do for our subway and bus and rail customers in the way that we have it right now. I'm sorry, Jim.
Thank you. Just one quick question on the the percentile cumulative probability that you've used of 80. Is that I know it can't be arbitrary, but was any consideration given to going either side of that, particularly up, and judging
Yeah, I
obviously the cost trade-offs that to get you there?
Well, I'll take this answer as far as I can, and then maybe somebody from headquarters staff could pick it up, because we're really implementing the MTA guidelines on the risk assessment methodology, and 80% was picked really as the right percentile to use. Other than that, I don't know, Ron, if you want to jump in.
I think we set a guideline of 80%. In this particular case, as you know, they have experience with it, with a similar project, and so the amount of the contingency between their base estimate and the 80 percentile gives a certain feel for what they have, and it's consistent with their other projects, and maybe a little more. So they felt comfortable with the 80 percentile.
Okay. With an eye on the clock, I'm going to close it unless, Alan, did something else?
We do have the ability to contact our customers for EasyPass. Have we attempted to go paperless with them, as opposed to the bills that we send out or the notices every month?
Well, we have the ability to contact them if they sign up through phone capability. They get an alert.
I imagine we're probably spending a fair amount of money on postage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that part of it we're going to leave to a different to a different committee. I think the takeaway, certainly for me on this, I think this is actually, when you look at the coordination across different parts of the bridge, the way this has been laid out over a multi-year process, I think you're looking at a well-phased, well-coordinated program. I think to some extent the fact that it is well managed and well organized allows us to really achieve the type of low bid that they've seen here. I don't think that's an accident in that. I mean, clearly we know that it's a difficult construction market, and we want to take advantage of that in doing that and get people to work. But I think part of what the contracting community is looking for is to have confidence that the MTA will be able to deal with things in a way that will allow them to get in and get out and get their work done. And I think that Joe and his team have defined a project that fits that, and I think we're reaping the benefits of that in terms of the bid that we've seen. So, good work, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have the risk assessment of the Mulberry Square fan plant, New York City please. And while I would put the burden on you, I promised the next committee chair that we'll get back on schedule. Yeah.
So you want the short version? Okay. Good afternoon. Presenting this afternoon will be Alak Saha, recently promoted to program manager within the infrastructure area. Alak brings some extensive experience in managing and delivering ventilation projects. So he'll conduct the presentation. Alak?
Thank you, Fred. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Presenting the risk assessment analysis of Mulberry Square fan plant design. As you know, the fan plants are part of the subway's emergency life safety system. It actually provides customer safety by controlling the spread of heat and the smoke in case of fire and smoke emergency, so that our customer can exit the system safely and quickly. This fan plant will cover two tunnel segments, which is IND B division A, C, and E from 14th Street to the West 4th Street, and the IRTA division number 1, 2, and 3 from 14th Street to Christopher Street. Here is actually our fan plant site, the triangle area owned by New York City Transit, located southeast corner of Greenwich Avenue to the left, 7th Avenue to the right. As you can see, the top left corner is the St. Vincent Hospital, which is across our project site, and down below is the Greenwich Street looking north. We have few challenges here. First is the building the plenum, underground plenum, both in Greenwich and 7th Avenue, maintaining the traffic at the street level as well as the train down below. The plenum is actually the air pathway that connects the fan plant and our subway tunnels. This area is actually historical districts, so we have many more challenges to dealing with during construction. This name it few. This location itself is to be a gas station early 90s, so we have to deal with the gas stations, and then underground tanks, we have to remove those. And then you can see the 9/11 memorial tiles. We need to preserve those, as well as also the 100-year-old building with the billboard next to our fan plant site, the settlement of this, we need to deal with that also. Here's the plenum I just talked about. The key plan basically shows the outline of our construction. Fan plant is at the middle. The plenum is extended both sides to serve the respective tunnel, both the IRT and the IND. This area is actually the high priority area for our IND tunnel. Our design team came up with the very specific innovations, mainly the 7th Avenue plenum. The fan plant is located at the middle is actually such that we can pick up the IRT tunnel segments. Thus, our team simply extend the plenum to the 7th Avenue, cover the IRT tunnel. This actually gives a extensive savings in terms of not having to have the IRT fan plant in the future, and it also realized a significant savings in this project, which we'll see down the line. Well, implementation of the lessons learned is the key to delivering on successful projects. We have come a long way in the fan plant program and turned around this thing since 1990s. Along the way, we learned a lot of lessons, and our design team actually implemented a series of lessons learned. The table shows the few of them that have been identified and mitigated. Take, for example, testing and acceptance. It used to be a very difficult one. Now we have a clear criteria in our spec. We have a shakedown process, which is conducted by our commissioning group, supported by our user department. Also, the fan plant program is currently being done by in-house engineers. Another one is right-of-way works, which requires the track outage. So the team actually worked during design to plan the number of track outages we need. And most importantly, we find the opportunity to implement the track shielding. The track shielding is nothing but a false shielding above our track that allows the contractor work from the street without affecting the train service below. So as you can see, we have reduced the number of track outage, and that translates to the dollar saving down the line. Here is actually the purpose of the fan plan. You're looking at the air exhaust to the street. The opposite direction would be the supply to the truck. The fan plants are being controlled from rail control center. So depending upon the location of the fire, the RTO can actually exhaust the smoke from the tunnel or supply the fresh air to the face of our customer. Here is the fan plan will look once completed from the street level. And this is actually 30 feet deep and 43 feet high to match the neighboring buildings. And you can see the provision for the 9/11 tiles here. And this facade design was incorporated with the input from the community, elected official, as well as the Landmark Commission. Well, the last year, the transit hired an independent consultant do the risk assessment. And we have a couple of kickoff meetings last year, followed by a couple of days of workshop, where all the stakeholders from New York City Transit, as well as the representative from MTA, have attended this process. We wanted to confirm our confidence level to 80% to our project cost $89 million and construction duration of 40 months. Ultimately, our goal is to establish a clear path so that we can deliver safely built quality project on time within budget. As I said, we have come a long way. This is actually the trend of a construction of duration and the cost since 1990 to now. You can look at this 1990 to 99 average construction project used to take 64 months, and that had 14 months of delay, which is now is average of 39 months. This is spending on the Jackson Avenue currently in construction, and we actually hoping that we will do better actually in 35 months. So also you can look at the trend of the cost. 1990 to 99 we used to overspend more than 9%, and gradually we're improving. We're actually savings now. We are projecting now 6% saving on Jackson Avenue currently in construction. These are some of the specific risk drivers we outlined here. The items, the risk with the cost and schedule and the mitigations. And as you can see, the specific dollars and the schedule savings out of this. One risk item I would like to mention is the last one, which I mentioned, the settlement of 100 years old building with a billboard. Well, we learned from the Second Avenue construction. We actually hired the same experienced consultant who hired by the Second Avenue group to address the similar situation. Currently, our legal team working with the building owners and his attorney to gain us access so that our consultant can do a structural assessment and the test, and the design solution will be included in our contract drawing. As you can see, we are well within the 80% mark. We are actually 100,000 within our the projected budget cost, and within a couple of weeks of our schedule. So as you can see, all of this was possible due to our implementation of lessons learned and our mitigations. All this innovation, we did that. So these are resulted in quality designs. So most of it have been actually implemented during design. So therefore, we see this kind of result here. Well, we have seen our confidence levels along the way. We save a significant amount of dollar, which is $19.5 million, and you can see 15 months had we not done these mitigations. So you can see that from the base estimate to the designs, we have $19.5 million and 15 months.
Plus you're ventilating 2 different subways.
That is correct. So as I mentioned, the Jackson Avenue, we're actually doing one van plan, they're serving 3 existing van plan and serving 3 different lines actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Thoughts, questions? More?
It's completed. What percentage of the time do you actually expect it to be running?
Only during emergencies. There won't be planned utilization of it. It'll cover emergencies that could occur, as Alok said, between 14th Street and Christopher and West 4th, coming down on the I&D or on the A division. So if there was a smoke event in either one of those two lines, this plant would be turned on and be utilized to address a smoke event, but no scheduled usage of it.
In your design, you have noise mitigation. I mean, was it just in that diagram? But presumably, you're still pumping smoke out the top, right?
Yes.
And you're not going to do it very often, and it's an emergency.
Yes.
I mean, how much? I mean, can't you just have people suffer a little bit more? If it's an emergency, they're going to be breathing the smoke through their windows. If they have to shut the window not to listen, I'm just wondering if, given the emergency nature of the installation and the fact that obviously you're concerned to be able to move a lot of air quickly in an emergency, on the other hand, it doesn't actually have to be as tolerable as something that was going to routinely be going on. Whether that's something we really take into account in our specifications
I think Tom wanted
and
to say
design.
something.
I don't think the cost of the what is the cost of the attenuator? The percentage cost?
Nominal.
Yeah, no.
Retrofitting an attenuator, which we've had to do in a number of locations, like the Steinway tunnels with ventilation plants or the ones at East River, because there we do have to run them at times when we're doing maintenance. And to add that at a later date was far more costly than it is in the original construction of the fan plant. So while we say that they're used for emergencies only, there are times for general maintenance we will run them. And to be a good neighbor, it makes all the difference in the world, because when you turn these fan plants on, you'll hear them 4 blocks away, at least 4 blocks away, if not longer.
Other questions? Locke, thank you very much. Again, I think this is a very positive story in terms of our planning and the way we're working through. Also, I think both of these projects put a challenge in front of us about how we seize the moment in terms of the construction market and are able to get more of our work done at a time at which the industry is clearly looking for work, and we could be meeting the dual goal of putting people to work and achieving some of our long-term state of good repair objectives for our system. Right, and a substantial savings. So Fred and Tom and I have talked about that, and hopefully we'll find some ways to be able to do some of that and utilize some of the savings that we're finding in thoughtful ways to do that. Thank you. Linda?
I'll just take a minute. I wanted to call your attention to a new item in the back that we've provided for status of the capital program. In addition to commitments and completions, which you see at every CPOC, we have something that's called the traffic light report. That will be a quarterly report. It is relative to all projects in construction. This particular report starts with third-party construction. The next quarter, we will add to this in-house construction and design. And what it does is it looks at the projects to see how they stand against cost, how they stand against schedule, and for those that are more than 50% complete, how much of contingency is spent against the amount of project complete. Anything that is greater than a 10% variance from where it was expected to be gets a red light. If it's less than that, it's green. And this, what you used to see before we made the changes we've made to CPOC, is when an agency would come, they would have something called the exception reports. This is, rather than doing it agency by agency, we'll have this whole list every quarter. When a project has a indicator that is red, you will see these pink pages that follow this report from the agencies that give a one-page explanation as to what has gone into a 10% or more variance, whether it's schedule or budget or contingency spend, and what the problem is and what the agency is doing about it, as well as the independent engineer's assessment as to what the agency is saying. In some cases, if the variance is significant and we have concerns, a project on the traffic light report could become part of the monitored program. The things that you heard today, such as vent plants, major B&T components, are not on the traffic light because they're regular monitored reports. So this covers everything else that the committee used to see through what was called exception reports, and we will keep it updated quarterly. So take your time and look at it. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk about it if you haven't had a chance to look at it next time, or I can take questions now.
I think two things become apparent as you page through this, and it is worth paging through. One is the tremendous amount of work that's underway. I mean, when you look through that and you see the things that are there, and I think, again, it's sometimes easy to forget how much work we have underway in our system on a continuous basis right now. I think the second thing that comes across, and it reminds me a little bit of bringing home my report card when I was in school, and my mother, who was wonderful, had a habit of always finding just that one place where maybe I didn't live up to her expectation. As you look here, you can look at and find a few reds that are there, but the overwhelming color going through here is green. The overwhelming color is saying that we are really hitting quite well on most of the work that we're doing. Yes, some problems do occur in certain locations, and we should pay attention to them. But it's a real impressive statement. It's a real statement for all of our agencies who are managing these capital programs. When you look at this, it jumps out at you, and I think we often don't take enough time to say that. So Fred happens to be the one person sitting here right now, but for each of our agencies, I think it is a real statement.
Just one follow-on comment on that score is I was looking at the Citizens Budget Commission report from '09, which talked about the capital projects monitoring, and basically this is right on to talk to that problem and answers it.
I think we have now actually, that report came out just about when I walked in the door, and I think we've now answered through the work that Linda has done just about every issue that was raised in that report. I mean, there remains the need to continue to drive, harder and faster in doing that. But I think the issues the issues at that time are now in the rearview mirror, which is good. Okay. Thank you very much. And we will move on to the Security Committee, if we can.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn. Yes, done.